Hello and good morning to everyone. It's a bright January 1st, 2020, and I wish everyone a very happy calendar new year. And new year is every day you wake up is a new year of your life. That's how I believe in. Culturally, so many cultures around the world celebrate New Year's differently based on their culture and civilizational constructs. In India, I know it's in the spring. Chinese New Year is separate, and so you can call it's a Western New Year. So I wish everyone who enjoys and celebrates and marks the Gregorian calendar or Western calendar New Year. Enjoy it. Wish you all the best. Wanted to share my thoughts and recordings on one of the topics that has been buzzing in my head. It's around transformation. And transformation happens every day. It's part and parcel of your life. Sometimes you do it intentionally. Sometimes you go through it and you don't even know. And transformation, when done collectively on a group of people, if it happens organically, well thought out, it's a more controlled change. And when it happens on its own without you realizing, it's an uncontrolled change, and then you're constantly reacting. So there is a proactive element to transformation and there is a reactive element to transformation. It's a part of the whole changing phenomenon. We live in a world, universe, space and time curve that nothing is constant, everything is changing. And you change physically, you change emotionally, you change mentally. And if an individual level, and if you grow down to cellular level, each and every cell of your body is constantly changing, adapting, growing, dying. So it's part of benefit or sort of part of if you are a living thing in a space-time curve, you have to learn to accept it, live with it, grow with it, and manage it. And there are only two aspects to it. Either you do it intentionally, you are aware of it, and you are managing it proactively. That's called as positive transformation. Another one is reactive, where you're just constantly adapting, catching up. You will have to go through it anyways. Change is permanent. Change is the only permanence in life. So I might be recording a series of talks around it, and I might start with you know, let me call it political transformation, and a couple of examples buzzing in my head these days. And then, of course, I'll go to economic transformations and subsequent talks, individual transformation at spiritual level, physical level, emotional level, and then the transformation of life and society around. So I might have a series of talks, not in that particular order, depending on how I feel on what day and what's buzzing in my head. I might just record and ship it to you all. So, talking of political transformations, there are a couple. You can see that there are a couple of societies that are undertaking it in a very intentional and a controlled fashion, in a very proactive manner. One is North America, and that transformation is happening against, well, you can say, because of the swing of the pendulum against the whole globalization, liberalization, and Donald Trump and the Republican Party is leading it. And then there's another transformation happening. The society that comes to mind is India, where Prime Minister Modi and his BJP party is leading I should call it a social transformation, a cultural transformation of India. In US, what you're seeing is more of a political transformation. What you're seeing in India is a cultural, it's a civilizational, and it's a social transformation. And then you're seeing another transformation that's happening in China, where President Xi is leading transformation of political order. Each one of these topics is worth a talk in itself, or a longer, probably even a book. And then you see in Japan, Prime Minister Abe is leading the transformation on what I should call more on a security aspect of Japan in the face of rising China in their neighborhood. So let me, double click on maybe the social and the cultural transformation that's BJP and Prime Minister Modi is unleashing in India. It's a very I'm a big supporter of it. It's a very well thought out, very well choreographed, very well controlled transformation, and that's the beauty of it. So it's not chaotic, it's not haphazard, it's not, seat of the pants and pulling the trigger. It's a very methodical, very well thought out, very well orchestrated, and very well managed. And it's in the larger interest of what I call Sanatan civilization. I don't want to use the word Hindu, it has sort of a very narrow construct to it or feel to it. And you have to sort of understand the history and dynamics of the civilization, the Sanatan civilization that thrived, that grew up, thrived, and reached to magnificent heights in the Indo-Gangetic plains in the Indian subcontinent. And then the sort of it's 5,000 years, 7,000 year, age old timeline if you follow, and the sort of roadblocks that it hit in the last, I should say around 1,000 to 1,200 years. And then the same civilization is trying to find its sort of mojo back. The sun is starting to rise and fall on my face. It feels good, so I'm not going to move. The warmth of a rising sun of a new year. How can you, not enjoy it? So, so, so if you think from that perspective, Prime Minister Modi is what I call a transformation agent, is a change agent, and and since it's a democratic society, a democratic political setup, the change you can say has been unleashed by the society itself, but they have chosen Prime Minister Modi as the agent of change. Now, important thing to realize here that he understands this role that society has given him, and and society gave him that role because he is fully capable of executing that role, and that's the beauty of democracy. In a democratic society, when a leader is elected, those who don't vote for that person or that party, they always feel that, oh, he's doing wrong and whatnot. But I look at it in a very philosophical manner that if people have chosen one person out of 1.3 billion, uh, and they must have seen something, they must have felt something, they must have intellectually realized something, and consciously felt that he's the right person, and majority has chosen him, then he definitely deserves to be there. Now, I support in a similar fashion Donald Trump, legit elected president, articulated his policies, what he wants to do before the election. Majority of the people voted for him. Now, those who didn't vote, whether they agree or disagree, but it's the majority vote, the will of majority of the folks that he's executing. The same is true with Prime Minister Modi. What he articulated, what the BJP government put it in its manifesto, and they have been saying those things for last 30, 40 years since the BJP came into existence. And if you go back to the 1950s, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee and the original thinkers and founders of the party, what they have been saying, Prime Minister Modi has sort of, is ready to execute on it, and is very, very sort of, happy to do it. And what I kind of like about this whole idea that it's his commitment to the word he gave to the people who voted for him and how he's executing it. That's a hallmark of a great leader. He's not pulling some rabbit out of the hat that nobody knew or nobody was aware of what they're going to do. He made a promise, and is happy to sort of execute on the promise, and is executing with full vigor. And that's why I call him as a positive transformation agent. Transformations, when done in a very sort of controlled and well thought out manner, they're always good for society. Transformations that are done in uncontrolled, haphazard manner, they end up yielding negative results. Because when you have thought through something, you have thought through the consequences. And when you have thought through the consequences, then you are ready to deal with the consequences and move ahead. And knowing the sort of ideological thinkers behind these transformation steps that they are unveiling, I'm fully confident that what they have, and all their talks and the philosophy is right out in the public domain. They're not hiding anything. A lot of people say, oh, RSS is the is the brainchild behind it. Yes, it is, but you should admire the kind of thinkers and brilliant folks that work in that organization or are associated with that organization with a with a sense of service and the kind of intellectual heft they bring to it in a very logical and a rational fashion. They sort of articulate why they think in a certain fashion, what is the rationale behind it, and why should people associate with them, and the country at large is starting to sort of admire it, have adopted their philosophy and voting for them. So if people are unable to read, understand, and fathom, it's not the issue of BJP or RSS or these thinkers. It's the issue with the individuals who are either not capable of reading things or understanding and then figuring things out, and if they are not, it's their loss. But majority at large, people who have voted for Modi ji and the BJP, one of the key element has been that Prime Minister Modi, being a brilliant orator and communicator, is able to take these ideas and in a very succinct manner sort of articulate it to the masses and connect at their level of intellect and bring them onto his side so they can empower him to pull these transformation. I've been in the corporate world for 30 years, and I can tell you one thing, that's a hallmark of a leader. In every company I've worked, and I advise a lot of leaders in various firms, that's how you do the transformation. You have to get people behind you, you have to get people excited about the change, and then manage that change in a very proactive manner. So he's brilliant at it, and it's good for India, and it's good for society, and it's good for the larger sort of construct around the whole Sanatan civilization for the aeons to come. One reason why Sanatan culture or the Sanatan civilization in the Indian subcontinent has been there for thousands of years and will be there for thousands of years, because every so often, whenever they needed, the culture was able to bring out such leaders very often, more often than not, to be able to move forward, to be able to adapt to the changing times, adapt to the changing scenarios and circumstances, and continue to thrive. Those cultures and civilizations who couldn't do it, they vanished. And they didn't vanish from the face of the earth, but their ideologies, their thinking, their way of life vanished. And it vanished. So the people existed, but the software of the people was sort of rewritten by the other software. And you see that how Christianity has overtaken majority of those native cultures in North America, South America, rest of the world. And then Islam came, and then so I call it Islamic software. So Christian software, Islamic software became very popular, and they erased the all old operating systems of many of these local tribes and cultures, and sort of rewrote Islamic and Christian software on these tribes and cultures. But there are two other cultures and softwares, operating systems that you might think that have three, I would say. One is Sanatani, one is Confucius in China, and the third one is Shinto in Japan. Uh, they have existed, they have resisted, they have adapted, and they are thriving again. And that's good for the universe, that's good for the all the people who are living on Mother Earth, because you do want some diversity of thought and culture and the way of life. Otherwise, if the uniformity takes place, we will all vanish. And that's a law of nature as well. That nature thrives because of diversity. It lets the competition come in and the best succeed, but it never really eliminates the competition. The competition will always be there for nature to be able to always do the selection of the best and move ahead. The day that process stops, the life form will cease to exist. So the process of natural selection applies to cultures, thoughts, thinking, and all these elements as well. And I think the strengthening of Sanatan thought once again and the culture and civilizational value through BJP's being empowered in India and the way that Modi ji is pushing it. It's good for entire humanity, I would say. Similarly, strengthening of Confucius thought in China, it's good for larger humanity. If China wouldn't have arrived on the stage and America was the sole power and just pushing the capitalistic agenda, it wouldn't have been good for the world. So I take all these competitive forces that evolve and thrive, and then the best of the best sort of takes a lead in certain area. It's good for humanity. It's good for larger construct of who we are as civilized, as culture, as humans on this earth, and it's in the larger interest of what I call competing ideologies. And when competing ideologies mash up, the best survive and the worst dies off. And what you're seeing in India is what for the first 50, 60 years of India's independence since 1947, even though it's a very old civilization, the transition from the British colonial past to the free India, for the first 50, 60 years, it was just trudging along uh, with not a clear sense of culture and civilization and who they are as a society. So there was lack of appreciation for their identity, if I may use the word. And finally, the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee and Deen Dayal Upadhyay and the Vajpayees of the world, uh, that whole appreciation of who we are as a cultural, our, what is our civilizational identity, what is our cultural identity, it started to take shape in the form of BJP, and BJP is now sort of bringing the changes around. Uh, Let me use the word status quo from colonial past to the post-colonial times of first 50, 60 years of independence, and all the civilizational depth, intellect, cultural elements that were buried under the Mughal and the Islamic invasions and the rules for the 800 years, and then the British put another layer of, sort of dirt on it for another 200 years. There is a transformation agent in Modi and BJP at large that is starting to remove that dirt from the cultural and civilizational constructs of India, and starting to show its uh, what the culture was, what the civilization was. So from that respect, my request to every Indian or who knows India, who studies India or loves India, should start to look at these changes that BJP is pushing from that angle. I have I read a lot, I listen to a lot of YouTube talks and whatnot. There are very few people who are talking about it. And I want to shout out and give mention to those names. One is Arif Muhammad Khan Saab. I'm a big fan of his intellect, sir. Keep going. He gets this point. Uh, Pushpendra Kulsresht, I think is the name. Another fine individual who gets it. All the RSS thinkers, they get it very clearly. And then there are, few others who get it and articulate it. One is Mr. Paranjpe. I'm forgetting his first name, but he understands and he gets it. And my request to all people who appreciate Indian culture, civilization, Hinduism, and all the aspects of Sanatan culture, to kind of be more vocal about it, to be more proud about it, and to say it openly. Because accepting the greatness of your identity and what it brings to the table and how the world sort of embraces it and loves it, it doesn't make you non-secular. It doesn't make you that you hate others. You appreciate best in others, but you should always be proud of who you are and the best that you have to offer to the universe. So, my whole take on this is this: Mr. Modi is a phenomenal transformation agent who has arrived at the right time in India for the right reason, and kudos to Indian people who voted him to the power, and I hope they vote him again and again, or at least this ideology gets voted again and again, because if not, the consequences are very bad. The civilization that gave Vedas and Upanishads and Puranas and yoga and Ayurveda and the entire uh, Rishi and Maharishi parampara of deep thinking, astronomy, astrology, maths would get wiped out. And if that gets wiped out, what would be left? We would become barbarians. These invaders who came from Central Asia, Middle East, they had nothing. I mean, they were just sheer power, brute force that invaded the country and sort of put a layer of ignorance for 1,000 years. And Britishers came to exploit because Indian culture and civilization was already weakened, and they exploited for 200 years. It's good for larger humanity on this earth that India discovers its old mojo, brings the best of its people's thinking to the forte and to the party of this earth, and helps not just helps but become a major contributor of original thought and thinking to make the life better for every human who lives on this earth. From that perspective, it's absolutely necessary. Now, Islam, there are 25% people who follow Islam in India, uh, and 4 5% Christians, Hindus, Sikhs. Every religion of the world is there in India. When they live harmoniously, they produce some brilliant things. But there is you're starting to see that the Christian world and the Islamic thinking is starting to clash with this whole resurgence of Sanatani thought in India. It's not good for uh, it's almost like there are hurdles in transformation. And that's another idea I would like to share, that Mr. Modi and his team, I'm sure they are very smart people, that they are aware of that there are always going to be roadblocks, hurdles, because when transformation happens, there are going to be, when the old guard starts to fall down, they are going to offer resistance. They are going to fight the change. They are going to make sure that the change sort of doesn't pick up the pace that they can't handle with. So, uh, so I'm sure Modi and his team is very aware of it and are going to sort of do everything to overcome these. And that's where the power of state institutions, the executioners of the laws of the land, need to be sort of shaped up and strengthened. And I'm starting to see good things coming. I'm starting to see the transformation going in the right direction. It's good for India. It's good for our culture. Good for our civilization, and it's good for humanity at large. Now, the losers in this transformation are where the the baton of ideology or the baton of thinking will get passed from the so-called seculars or pseudo-seculars or minority appeasers. They need to realize that India, when it was in its full glory, could create Khajuraho to Ajantas and Alloras, could create phenomenal arts and culture and music. And if the same thing happens, it'll be good for a larger civilization, that similar beautiful things are going to happen. Indians are extremely creative, provided they have this deep rooted sense of identity, pride in it, and they are given the sort of ecosystem where they can thrive again on those parameters. You don't they Indians in the last 1,000 years, under the whole, you know the force of invasion from Central Asia and Middle East, and then the exploitation of Britishers, sort of lost that mojo and the freedom to think and be able to express in a creative way. They're starting to find it again. That social and cultural transformation that Mr. Modi and BJP is unleashing is probably going to provide that impetus once again to be able to get in touch with their core, uh, what I call elements of basic thinking that will help you to give some phenomenal things to the universe once again, like the Vedas and Upanishads, and take it forward, the yogas and the Ayurvedas of life. Because what the West has given is phenomenal things, wonderful things, but what West has also given is nightmarish environmental degradation, some amazing things in healthcare, but some lousy addictions to the drug industry. The capitalism has provided a lot of wonderful things, but then there are a lot of, you know, downside things that people are dealing with. So, an alternative approach to life thinking will emerge from Indian subcontinent, provided this transformation, the social and cultural transformation succeeds what Modi is pushing. And I wish the same thing for Confucius culture, that its transformation and its regaining of power should succeed in China, because that will also provide some phenomenal alternatives to just the whole Western push for capitalism, money, and thriving and everything that we have seen in the last 300, 400 years. So with that, I'm going to wish everyone once again a very happy new year. Enjoy it, thrive in it, and let me know what you think of some of these ideas that I discussed here on the whole cultural and social transformation that Modi as a phenomenal transformation agent is pushing. And I'm so glad that all the hard work that RSS put in the last 50, 60, 70 years is starting to bear fruit. And I just hope and wish that the people of India see the positives in the changes that Modi and his team is unleashing. They rally behind him, they support him, they become more proud in their culture and civilization. They carry their identity on their sleeves and be sort of happy and great about it. And understand that who you are as a person, and when you are very secure in your identity is when you get to do your best of the work. If you are insecure, if you are not sure, if you are dilly-dally, you don't get to do the best of your work. So with that, I would like to close it here. The light and shade in the video, just enjoy it. I just didn't want to move as the sun was coming up and I was enjoying the warmth, but take it as a photographic sort of a change that you'll have to adjust. But focus on the content. Let me know what you think, and then I'll continue to sort of hammer this topic of transformation in various aspects of existence and see what you think about it. Chaliye sahab, have fun. Take care of everyone. Take care of your loved ones. Be happy and enjoy life. Bye.